University's latest installment of our career webinar series. My name is Alicia Beal, and I'm the Director of Alumni Relations here at Dominican. And this is one of the ways that we help our alumni connect both with the expertise of other alumni and with each other, and connect around careers and life. This webinar will be taped and will be available, the recording will be available on our website. So if some of our registrants weren't able to join us, or for other alumni, they will have access to it. A few housekeeping things before we begin our webinar about working parenthood. I hope that you have all filled out the poll that you should see in front of you. That is, the question is, how many children are you responsible for? There will be polls throughout this presentation, and that will help Heather present her material and understand where everyone is. If you'd like to ask a question at any point during the presentation, please use the chat box, which should be on the right-hand side of your screen. Simply type it in, hit return, and we will be taking questions after each section. So there's 5 tips, so after each tip we will be taking questions. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Heather Wasielewski, a 2000 graduate of Dominican University with double majors in Spanish and International Business. She later obtained an MBA from the University of California, Berkeley, and the Columbia Business School in 2013. She currently is Vice President of Talent Management at Landmark Health in Los Angeles. Before Landmark, Ms. Wasielewski spent 12 years at DaVita in various roles and 4 years as a consultant with Accenture. But the reason that she is with us today is because in 2014, she founded Parents with Careers after her transition to working parenthood. During this transition, she realized that there were a lot of parents struggling with this important life phase. And Parents with Careers is a company dedicated to helping working parents navigate the journey of working parenthood through the power of education, networking, and support. And without further ado, I give you Ms. Heather Wasielewski. Heather?
Thank you so much, Alicia. And I want to say hi to some of my fellow classmates. I recognize names in the participant box, so it's fun to connect with you guys virtually from 1,000 miles away. It's interesting. We can go ahead and close this first poll, Brad. So there's a good mix of 1 to 3 children that people are responsible for. And I can tell you, as a working parent, it doesn't matter if you have 1 or 3. It's being a working parent is challenging. So Alicia gave you a little bit of my bio, but what makes me qualified to talk about this topic, and why did I start Parents with Careers? As I said, working parenthood is challenging, but it's extremely rewarding. And I will also say that it's a transition. It's a life transition. And my transition into working parenthood was a complete flop. I fell literally flat on my face. I'm very type A. I've been successful. I had a good career. And I thought becoming a parent was just going to be as smooth as everything else I had worked hard for in my life. And I quickly learned that that was, in fact, not the case. I was very, very blessed and fortunate to have a very close mentor that helped catch me a little bit. I think most working parents' default inclination, at least the working parents I've talked to, is, you know what, this working parent stuff, it's pretty hard. So I think maybe I'll just either go part-time or stay at home. And I was contemplating going part-time, and my mentor, thankfully, told me that she didn't think that was the answer. So I thought through that a little bit, and I say I was blessed for 2 reasons. And the first was, it's embarrassing, right? If you're successful in life, if you're successful in your career, it's embarrassing to admit that you might not be successful at something that should be the most important thing to you in the world, and that's becoming a parent. And trying to balance the two together, your being a parent and a career, is hard. So having a mentor was really, really helpful. And she helped me think through a couple things, which I'm going to talk about. The lessons I learned when I think through this is the result of this webinar and the result of this company. So I first and foremost want to say is working parents, you're not alone. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Throughout this webinar, I'm going to, as Alicia mentioned, ask you some questions. So the first question, if you can go ahead, Brad, and pull up the next poll question, is what is your frame? How do you look at your relationship, the relationship between your career and your family life? I'm going to give you guys just a few seconds to answer that. I think these polls are very, very cool. So thank you guys for participating. This is actually, I'm really happy with these answers. I think a lot of times, and when I've done this in the past, it's actually been kind of a third, a third, a third. But it's good that you guys have a healthy perspective on that relationship. How you frame the relationship is really, really important. We can go ahead and close this poll. So for those that said even blend of both, and those that said mostly complementing, great job. That is the frame first and foremost you need to have, because your frame matters. I think society, and I know for me personally, my default was to see the relationship as you see on the screen right now. Two separate windows. There was my work life, and then there was my family life. And I saw them different. I didn't see them intertwined. And what that did is it created an underlying source of conflict that I didn't even realize. You know, a lot of this I think stems from unconscious bias. And I'm thrilled at how society has evolved in talking and engaging with working parents. But I think that is an evolution. And back 15 years ago, I really felt like there was an underlying conscious bias that you had to keep the two separate, and that you couldn't necessarily bring your whole self to work. And that's hard when you are spending all your time with your work family and you can't bring your family life into that. That can be conflicting and create an underlying source of tension. If you find that you're finding areas where you feel this conflict, so first, just pause and recognize your frame, as you did with that initial question. And then reflect a little bit more and see if that perception of whether they're complementary or not is consistent in your life. Because what you want to get to is this. Instead of seeing them as pure complements, instead of seeing them as an even blend in two separate circles, what you want to see is that they're interrelated. And in fact, I call the overlapping area parent power. Because I can tell you, as a working parent, what I've learned from being a mother has helped me in my career. And what I've learned in being a career woman, a career contributor, has helped me in being a parent. And in fact, that's what my book was about, is how you could reframe that and really leverage the power. So I think instead, as parents, as working parents, I think instead of trying to think of how can we balance, that concept of balance where I'm going to do work over here and family over here, we need to reframe that. And we need to recognize that as working parents, we have unique contributions to bring to the workplace. And in fact, our working parenthood should be celebrated. And when we go home after a long day, instead of having what you read about as that working parent guilt, that guilt, you should reflect and offset that a little bit. Because what you learned at work, if you just had a passionate, powerful day where you felt really fulfilled by what you did at work, you know what? That positive energy is going to come home to your kids. So whenever you feel that internal conflict kind of bubbling up a little bit, just pause a minute and remind yourself that as working parents, you are a unique set of contributors to the workforce. And your career is helping to develop skills and talents that bring unique contributions to your home life. That's really, really important. Um, I'm going to pause and just ask if that resonates with anyone. If you can type in the chat window any comments or reflections on that before we move on to the next tip.
Well, and while people are uh, thinking about this and typing, I just want to echo that I think as a working parent myself, what you're saying is definitely resonating with me as I sometimes can have a very hectic, fast-paced job. And when I go home, it's the energy that I get from that comes home and carries out to my kids, and they can tell that I've felt productive and it makes me happy, and then my whole attitude is very, very good. Um, and I'm noticing that John is saying that what if you've had a bad day, which is kind of counteracting what I just said, and that shouldn't be brought home.
Yes. So it's interesting. You can also have a bad day at home. And, how do you bring that to work or not bring that to work? I think that's a really good question. I think in those instances, you almost need a transition period, right? So you're right. The bad energy from that day at work shouldn't be brought at home. So do what you need to do between that transition from work to home so that you can readjust, right? Reground yourself and be fully present when you're at home. When I say blend work and family life, that doesn't mean that they're both at all places at all times. Yeah, you can stop at Doc Ryan's, and hey, it's St. Patrick's Day, so it'll probably be very crowded today too. Doc Ryan's is a place we used to hang out in college, actually. For those of you that either didn't go there or didn't go to Dominican, there's a couple on the call. But that transition period is really important. But at the same time, so what I'm not saying is that you should completely be thinking about both family life and work life all the time. You do need to be fully present in the moment that you're in. But this means more is recognizing that the skills from one side contribute to the other. So what I try to do is reflect. And I also, if I go home and I have family there and I need that moment to decompress, I be honest about it. And I say, you know what? I need 15 minutes. If I'm with my children, maybe I'll tell them to go jump on the trampoline or, put on a show for them. But I need 15 minutes to transition so that I can be fully present for you. That expectation setting is something that I learned in my career. So many times we just expect people to assume where we're at. When you're a manager, one of the first things that you learn pretty quickly is if you're not very clear about what you're feeling, even what mood you're in and what presence you're in, anything you say could be received differently. So I think when you have a bad day at work, or like I said, at home, sometimes that happens where you have a bad day at home and you have to go into work and say, you know what? I'm just going to check in with you guys and be honest. I'm not fully present in this moment right now because I have something going on at home. I need 15 minutes to whatever it is, drink my cup of coffee or just check some email, and then I'll be ready to be fully present. And then on the way home, you can stop at Doc Ryan's. Other thoughts or insights? All right, we're going to go to tip number 2. So first, if we can pull up the next poll, Brad, I want to ask you guys what you would do in this situation. Your child has a small recital at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, which is, assume for this scenario, it's in the middle of your workday. What would you do? Okay, so what's exciting about this is I think we have quite a few participants that have a healthy relationship with their boss. So that's ideally, you should be able to explain the situation to your boss and ask if he or she minds if you step out for a little bit. You'll see based on the responses that some people don't feel the need to ask permission, and that's actually healthy too. If you have trust with the boss, you shouldn't have to micromanage every single thing that you do. And one person also blocked their calendar and um, said that they'll only respond or tell people if they ask, right? So this is a blend. There are some people that won't even talk about where they're going. And again, I think society has evolved, so people are more open to this, the fact that we have lives and we have family, and it's important to be there for important moments of their life. Um, but some people are more open than others with it. I came up with this situation, with this scenario, because it's one that actually happened to me. And that leads to my second tip. We need to rethink permission. So 4 of you said that you would ask permission to leave, right? And depending on the relationship you have with your boss, that's a good thing. But I can tell you, in my personal situation, I started wondering, should I ask permission? I was one of the earlier working parents in my team, and it was kind of a double-edged sword. There's a lot of research on there that exists on what's called a mommy brand. And I also think this applies to fathers too. But going back to unconscious bias, there are sometimes some studies out there that say that society used to brand you or think you were less committed to your organization, you were less efficient, and maybe had less potential if you were a parent. And what's sad about that is that was assumed. It was never proven, it was just assumed. And so that leads me to suggest that you really rethink permission, right? So assuming whether or not you need to ask permission, that part's on you. If you think you need to ask permission because you don't have a full relationship with your boss, that's maybe something that you can act on and work to have a deeper relationship with your boss and an understanding. But don't feel like you have to ask permission all the time. If you are highly contributing, if you are fully engaged, you don't need to micromanage your calendar, just as your boss probably doesn't micromanage his or her calendar with you. So don't miss the opportunity to miss important things in your kids' lives because you feel like you have to ask permission, and you're either too scared to ask it or you feel like you've asked it too many times, right? Come up with underlying agreements with your team and understanding so you all know, not just you, but the other working parents and the other people that might have other things that they have going on in their lives, like marathons to train for. Have an underlying agreement among your team on when somebody needs to ask permission and when they can, just as high-functioning team members and grown adults, make a decision to block their own calendar on their own time. Does that make sense? Don't over-ask.
I know you're leaving some time now, and I hope some people will add some comments or questions. And I really think, I just want to kind of once again give my stamp of how this is resonating, I know, with me as a parent. And I've been very fortunate here at Dominican to work for someone who understands this. And one of the ways that we talk about it is, instead of really asking permission, it's about saying, my daughter has a recital in this day and I'd like to go, and this is what I'm doing to make sure that everything's taken care of, so everything will be okay during that time. Is there anything I've missed? Is there something that I don't, that I've missed on this? And that way we've made sure that all the work is getting done that needs to get done, and that we're being responsive to the needs of whoever might be asking us for things. And it's less of a permission and more of a collaboration.
That's a great way to frame it. And again, you could do that. It doesn't matter whether it's a 2 p.m. recital for your daughter or son, or whether it's a 4 hour offsite that you need to go to. That's just a good habit. So that's another thing where we can, that communication. As working parents, we learn it, we share it, and it's something good to practice for everything.
Before we move on, Erica just sent a message saying that she's lost audio. Has anyone else lost audio? Or if everyone can just type in, we can still hear you, that would be helpful, so that we know we're getting out there. Okay, so people are typing. They can still hear you. I'm sorry if, oh, Erica's back on. Okay, great. Just checking.
All right.
Back to you, Heather.
Well,
Good.
thank you. Let's move on to the next poll. You could pull it up, Brad. So when was the last time you reviewed your calendar and analyzed your recurring calls to determine if they were calls you no longer needed to attend?
And Heather, by calls, do you mean meetings or calls or?
Yeah, yeah, I would include meetings in that.
Great.
So this one's a little juicy. We have kind of both ends of the spectrum here. We have within 6 months, and then we have never. This leads me to one of what I call the key talents of working parents, and that is forced efficiency. As a working parent, this is a skill that you develop because you are forced to do it. And we can maximize it as working parents, and it's also an excellent, excellent skill to bring to the workplace. So one of the things when I was trying to figure out how I was going to achieve this term balance before I fully had reframed my perspective was I got frustrated because I was on calls all the time, calls that I had been on for, forever, it felt like, and I wasn't really adding value. So I'd sit and I'd listen to the call and I'd be there because it was on my calendar, but I wasn't getting anything out of it and I wasn't adding anything to it. And I realized that this is a hidden inefficiency in corporate America. Inertia is a very, very powerful force. And we get on calls and committees are formed and work groups are formed and recurring meetings happen. And then next thing you know, they keep happening just because they've always happened. People don't always stop and ask, what is the purpose of this call? Is it still meeting this purpose? And do I specifically need to be there? So as working parents, this is a great time to do spring cleaning on your calendar and really look through every recurring meeting you have in your calendar and any new invites to any calls or meetings that come in, and ask yourself 2 questions. Will I add value? And if I won't add value, will I learn anything by participating in the live discussion, or can I just read the recap? Maximizing force efficiency by clearing your calendar of things that aren't adding significant value, you're freeing up capacity to work on the things that add value. And as you drive more results, right, if you spend your time in the right areas of focus, your contributions at work actually increase. So you can get more done in the same workday as somebody else that's on all of those other inefficient calls. And the time that you're working is higher value add. So this is a skill that I think everybody in the workplace should have. But I think this forced efficiency is something I learned in working parenthood. Because back when I didn't feel like I wanted to get home to my kids, I accepted every call. It didn't matter if I was in the office 15, 16 hours a day. I didn't have kids to go home to. And when I wanted to be home, I was a lot more thoughtful about my calendar management. about the meetings that I accepted, and even the work that I did. So forced efficiency isn't just about calls, it's about effectively using your team. Um, and the other thing that I learned is when I started to delegate more effectively, I actually grew my team. And there were people on my team that were thirsting for skills and talents that I was denying them because I just kept holding on to everything. So this forced efficiency, it has such incremental power, and is really a skill that as working parents, it's forced upon us, we have a catalyst to really drive towards it. And as working parents, we should maximize it. And it's also a special skill that we should use to brand ourselves as working parents in the workplace. Does anyone have any experience with this, or anything that they realized that they were doing, or anything they delegated more efficiently after you had kids? I know we have people that are all responsible for children on this call. And what I'd
Heather,
like to
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, I think that when you say this, I think back at what maybe I did. But I hadn't thought about it that way, so I'm not sure. Um, there are probably things that I have been delegating that I might not have, but when you're a working parent and you do have these time crunches, you just kind of do it, and you don't necessarily stop and think back, oh, that's what I did. So sometimes it's hard to come up with an example because you just kind of did it, and then you look back and you realized, oh, I did it because my time was limited in a
Yeah,
way it hadn't been before.
that's why I call it forced efficiency. It happens without even realizing it. And I think it's worth people sitting back and reflecting on it, because there might be you might be able to replicate it in other areas or share it with your teams. This also happens a lot of times with budget. When the economy starts to get tight, that's when companies and departments look at their budgets and they're more thoughtful about how they spend. So it's the same thing with time. So as working parents, really sit and look at that calendar. For those of you who have never, starting just with the calendar, if you've never analyzed your calendar, if that's the one action that you do today, that you might find time that you didn't know you had by doing that. And again, leverage the power of your team. There are people, you would be surprised, and hopefully you already have in your career been surprised at how much people want to learn. And so giving them a chance and giving them some insight, you're helping to plan your succession, actually, so that you can move up in your career, as well as building them and creating capacity for yourself. The next poll, if you could pull that up, Brad, is about the water cooler. So this is it's related to efficiency a little bit, which is why it comes up afterwards. But after you became a parent, how much did the frequency, if at all, of the water cooler and casual chats you had with your colleagues at work change? Wow, I may be the Lone Ranger on this one. So this is really good, and I'm going to talk about why. I will say, in my particular case, and in the cases of many of the colleagues that I talk to, especially in graduate school, um, the length and time of their casual conversations they had significantly decreased, and in a few cases it stopped. And the reason why was they wanted to finish their job as quickly as possible to get home. And so they felt like that time at the water cooler was wasted time. We can go ahead and close out that poll. Um, and that's not exactly true. That water cooler time is really important. The network that you have is really, really important for working parents. And here's why. First of all, that water cooler time, you want to be efficient about it, but a lot of times at that water cooler, you get important insights that help you in the work that you're doing. So you never want to completely stop them. They add value. What you might want to become forced efficient on is the type of water cooler talk. So maybe you spend less time in unproductive talk. There's a casual relationship building, but maybe when it turns to gossip, that's when you bow out, right? But that's important. The other thing is, as working parents, you want to rethink your network a little bit. And I actually have some information on this on my blog and website, because you'll need different types of help than you need before you had kids. So networked. Um, I've networked to find a nanny or to find help caring for my kids. I've networked and learned more about navigating the education system. And my network has jumped in to save me when I've had to work late, and I've jumped in to save them. Um, and most importantly, the story that I opened with, my network actually helped save my career. And if it weren't for that dear mentor that was a trusted confidant that talked me through and helped me reframe my perspective, I would have exited the workplace until, or at least went part-time, and I wouldn't have been as happy. So as working parents, you need different types of support, and that personal interaction is really important. And who's in your network and how you leverage your network is really, really important, even more so when you're working parent, when you become a working parent, because you have a whole nother set of challenges that you need to reach out to. And Erica, I'm glad to know that it increased, because it really is important. And a lot of times you find that you build stronger relationships. I don't know if this is true, Erica, with you, but you can build stronger relationships with people that maybe you didn't have as much in common with before, and now all of a sudden you have kids, and so you can bond with them on a different level, um, which sounds like that was the case. Okay, now we're going to turn to the last poll. Um, oh, I'm sorry. The last poll is at the end, and it's not an official poll. So I'm going to just jump into tip 5, and that's to seek creative solutions. I think when you are a working parent, there are a lot of different problems that you're faced with that you haven't been faced with before. Um, and you really have to be thoughtful and creative on how you solve them. So, for example, one of the things that tends to get cut in a lot of families I know that are married is date night happens a lot less, right? Either people don't have money for date night, they don't have time for date night. And I have some friends that have done really creative solutions on how they'll still have date night, even though they're both busy working parents. One friend couple I know, they do date switches with their friends. So they don't switch spouses, but they switch babysitting. So one weekend or one Friday night a month, one couple watches all of the couple's kids, and then another night a month, the other couple returns the favor. So they don't have money to be spending on babysitting for Friday nights, but by swapping babysitting duties, they both get a chance to get out, and in fact, their kids have a built-in play date, which is pretty cool. Another couple that I know actually had somebody come to their house. So it was too hard for them logistically and too long for them to go out and have a 4-hour date. So they would have somebody come, and in fact, it was forced efficiency. That person actually came and tutored their kids in Mandarin, and while their kids were learning Mandarin, they were in the kitchen and the dining room having a nice romantic dinner. So those are 2 examples of creative solutions that I know people have done. I wonder if anyone has any on the call, and this is partly a selfish ask so we can all learn from them, but has anyone come up with creative solutions to help navigate some of the challenges in working parenthood, or the transition to or navigating career and parenthood at the same time?
Well, while some people are typing, I will just share that when I learned to ask for help from people who I didn't necessarily know very well, but our kids went to school together, my whole world opened up. My kids could do activities that I wouldn't necessarily be able to transport them to because, a parent would agree to do it, and I would happily return the favor for something. And so people that you don't know, aren't close personal friends with, become your resource. And once I figured out that it was okay to ask, it was okay to ask. And if somebody couldn't do it, they wouldn't do it. But it also let them know that it was okay to ask me too. And once I figured that out, it made it much easier to make sure that my kids got the opportunity to do things and that I had a safety net. So if I get stuck someplace, there's someone I can call and somebody knows that they can call me. And that's kind of changed, especially as a single parent. That's really changed how I approach people that I come in contact with around my kids.
That's a great tip. And John points out if you're lucky enough to have grandparents that live close to you, they're great babysitters. I know some people on the call that have also leveraged the power of grandparents. One thing specifically, as far as delegating and really engaging your network to help you, I have this on my website too. There's a spreadsheet I created because I think your home network is really interesting, and it's important to be thoughtful about it because there are experiences as a parent that you're going to want to share with your child. And then there are other experiences that you're fine if somebody else takes, right? So homework is one that comes up where I know, and I'm one of those parents, I really enjoy doing homework with my children because I see how they're progressing. I see what issues and challenges they're having with school. I see where maybe I need to help and work with them a little bit more and talk to the teachers. I have other parent friends that could care less about doing homework, and they are thrilled if their child comes home from the after school program with their homework done, right? So thinking through what experiences, part of this creative problem solving is thinking through what experiences do you treasure and what experiences are important for you to have with your children. And for those that aren't, can you effectively delegate those to somebody that could help you? And again, free up that capacity so that the capacity you have for home is focused on those things that you matter most. Another classic one that comes up with this is house cleaning. And I've had somebody actually say to me that when I hired somebody, when my partner and I agreed to have somebody come clean the house a week, I think it saved our marriage because it was not fulfilling at all for this person to clean her house. And so she was very happy to delegate that to somebody else. So that's creative solutions at home. You could also have creative solutions at work with forced efficiency. And I can tell you an example of this. So at my last job, there was a call that was about every 8 weeks. And it was a company update. All the lines were muted. And really, you were just listening. There was nothing, it was truly an update call. There was no need to engage on the other end. When I took the call at my desk, I was always multitasking. It was really hard for me to focus on the call and not check email. So what I started to do, I'm a big fan of exercise to help balance me out. So I'm a runner. And I decided I would start running during those calls. And I would run a consistent path where I knew there wasn't stoplights, so I was safe and my focus wasn't shifting on cars, right? I had a pretty set route that I ran that I knew. But I was actually able to more fully focus on the call because I wasn't distracted by my email. And I got a workout in at the same time. So that was a creative solution for me to be more efficient and solve two things at once. So maybe not every employer is willing to let you do that, but I will say I did not ask permission. I just started to do that on my own. And then I suggested it to other people who also did the same thing. There are all different types of creative solutions that you can find. And some of those creative solutions will help you live all of these tips, right? So rethinking permission, finding more efficiency, rethinking your network, and leveraging that network to help you find efficiency, to help you see creative solutions. And all of those are based on that first tip. You have to remember that as a working parent, you have a unique skill set to bring to the workplace. So instead of branding and telling yourself that it's constant conflict, tell yourself that you actually have this unique special skill to bring, and celebrate that. Because I think the society has been evolving and people are appreciating more the fact that when you come to work, you're not just bringing part of yourself to work. You are a whole person, and the sum of all of your experiences, both at work and at home, really help you live more fully and contribute more fully. So that's it. These are my 5 tips. There's a whole bunch of tips within there that you probably have that you can add. I would love to hear them. I would love for you to share them with me. I'm constantly looking for new tips to share with other working parents and with the network of working parents that I hope to grow. I am curious if you can chat in the chat box one thing that maybe you'll reconsider or you'll do differently after hearing this presentation. And thank you everyone for participating. More productive water cooler time. Love it. Finding more creative solutions. This is great. I'm gonna let the other answers pop up too. And in fact, you might find, oh, sorry, you might find more creative solutions at the water cooler. You never know.
And I'll just say while we're waiting for some more things to come up here, I want to say thank you to Brad Taylor, who's been our silent partner today, helping us facilitate this. It looks like you're getting some great responses, and I'll let you comment on those. Heather?
Uh-huh. So these are, first of all, thank you. I'm honored that you guys have a takeaway from this. So thank you. And as you're working through them, if you want to brainstorm more, please feel free to reach out for me. There's a lot you can see through the theme here. The power of networking to help is really important. So we're a network within ourselves. And I think, Jenny, to your point, congratulations. I commend you for thinking ahead and planning for how you will transition. I think I will be honest. I wish I had thought a little bit more and did a little bit more research, because I think maybe my whole family would have had a smoother transition. There are a lot of great resources and books out there. I do have, the website, my website here, parentswithcareers.com. There's a recommended reading page. And for everyone, there's a lot of books, both career books and family books, that can help you think through some of those things. And Jenny, as you go through that transition, and anyone, as you go through that transition, I'm very passionate about helping other working parents. So please feel free to reach out. My email is right there. And if there's anything that you're curious about, or you have any blog suggestions, I also welcome those as well.
I'd like to say thank you, Heather, for sharing your wisdom with all of our alumni, both those on the call and I know all the many more that will be watching this later. This is just a wonderful addition to some of the topics that we've been talking about when it comes to careers. You know, we've talked about how to get a job, we've talked about LinkedIn and things like this, and this is just really complements and helps those of us who are working and actively parenting to reframe how we think about our work and our life. And I think you've given us so much to think about, and I'm very honored to have one of our distinguished alumni come back and present this to us. So I just want to say thank you very much, Heather. And we also hope that all of you on the call will join us for more webinars and for some of the activities we have going on, in events going on in person. Check out our website for all of those. So thank you again, Heather. And if there's any more questions, feel free, our participants, to type them in, and we'll answer them now.
And I want to thank Dominican and Alicia and Brad for letting me host this. I will say that I'm very, I feel honored and privileged to have gone to Dominican, and I've had life-changing experiences during my time there, including the study abroad program to Florence. So I just really value my education that I got at Dominican. So I continue to value it. Thank you for letting me host it.
Excellent. And John just asked when this will be available on the DU website, and Brad is typing, so he will answer that question. Our silent partner, Brad, tomorrow morning. Our silent partner, Brad, who is also, just in case you were wondering, is the person who sends you all those emails you get from us. So many thanks for his help on this webinar. And yes, it is open. Jenny asked if people who are not alumni can watch these webinars. They can. These are not password protected. They are available to anyone, and the presenters know that. So they've been put out to the world, primarily to our alumni community, but they're out there. Thank you. All right, now I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you again, Heather, and thank you to all of our alumni. We look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you, everyone.